Listen to my children, you shall hear. We should start the master DVD and the master tape. And we got one minute to go. Oh. Listen, my children, and you shall hear. Of the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, and there was another guy. If the British march by coronavirus 19, that is, by land or sea or Chinese or European airplane, get the SAM missiles going. I'm William Wagener, and we are live here tonight on Friday the 13th. And to prove to you it's not an unlucky number, I'm going to straighten out my tie. Number one. Number two, who gives a crap? Taking my hat off for you that tuned in tonight. I cannot ignore the coronavirus 19 panic. And I have some interesting video to play for you, but here seated next to me is my 6 guests in green, yellow, purple, blue, another purple, and red. It's the name of a toilet paper called Who Gives a Crap? That's the titled toilet paper. Now, I went to Costco the other day. There's a close-up. And they were out of toilet paper. I went the next day, and I've never seen Costco in Santa Maria, California out of toilet paper, ever before. I mean, they sell it by big bundles. So I went to Walmart. They also were out of toilet paper. Then I went to Albertson. They were out. And I went to several other stores, not picking on Albertsons. And they were all out of toilet paper. I said, how can this be? We have 0 confirmed cases of coronavirus 19 in Santa Barbara County as of today, Friday the 13th. Okay? I'd say this is lucky and good for the people, the 750,000 people of Santa Barbara County. I'd say this is good for us. This is a lucky day. So my wife went out, got on the internet, because we do a little Airbnb thing on the side, and we can't run out of toilet paper when you're doing Airbnb. And she quickly ordered and got us 2 cases. Didn't short any of you in Santa Maria. I don't know why you're having a shortage, why people ordered, but we got 2 big cases of it. Like this. Who gives a crap? That's the name of the company, I guess. And we got 2 cases. We got all the toilet paper we will need for several months. By May 3rd, 4th, 5th, certainly by May 10th, the coronavirus will be a dead issue. Like all other influenza seasons we've had, the N1H1 virus, the bird flu virus. These are all influenza things that happens in this season between January and March. But people are panicking. We've got less than 50 deaths in all of the United States that we know of from coronavirus 19. So rushing out and buying up all the Kleenex and all the toilet paper you can and hoarding it isn't going to help. So I'm going to give you a number. If you're out of toilet paper and you pay attention, towards the end of the show, I'm going to give you, and we'll flash it on the screen, a number you can call, and I will personally deliver 2 rolls of fresh, brand new toilet paper. Who would want used toilet paper? To the first 2 people that call, if you're in Santa Maria, I will deliver it to you, 2 rolls. So if you're having a hard time finding toilet paper and you need those 2 rolls, pay attention tonight, and you will get 2 free. The first 2 calls that come in, and you'll get a message machine. I won't personally answer it. I'll just wait and see who calls. And whoever calls 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, too bad. So we just had a conference in Santa Barbara, which almost nobody attended except a few media people and a few homeless people and people who had nothing else to do. And what we learned, and I think it was interesting, in all of Santa Barbara, if my ears served me well, they had 6 tests done in Santa Barbara, 1 done somewhere else in the county. 7 tests. 7 people were tested for coronavirus 19. And voila, they all tested negative, implying that nobody in Santa Barbara County has even got a mild case of coronavirus 19. So why are people panicking and buying all the toilet paper here? I don't get that. Doesn't make sense to me. That's why I'm promising you, if you just tuned in, you will get 2 rolls for the first 2 people who call on the number I'm going to put on the screen here later. This is a live show Friday, the 13th of March in 2020. No, we're not going to put that number up yet. I want you to watch to the end of the show because I'm bringing you some information you will not see on Fox, CNN, ABC, and whatnot. First of all, Italy does have a problem. Today I got on my machine and I contacted several doctors in Europe that I personally have met. I personally know them. One in Germany had reached out to me to say, William, are you okay? And I answered her. And I talked to somebody from Italy. They're from a little town called Piacenza, Italy. That's just south of Milan and north of Genoa and a little bit to the east. They have a population of 102,000 people in this little town, which is roughly about the size of Santa Maria if you don't include Orcutt. They have 54 confirmed dead from the coronavirus. 54 in a population the size of Santa Maria. 102,000 plus a few, maybe a few less that have left the town. Piacenza. And I talked to a young lady who's from that town and now living in England, and she's extremely distraught and worried about her parents and her family there. I talked to a doctor from Rome, and his message was a little more upsetting to me. He said, I have now contracted the coronavirus 19, and I have it. I'm not coming back to work when I finish my shift today, or tonight, his time, because I have the virus, and I'm going to self-quarantine myself and treat myself at home. And he's a medical doctor in one of the big hospitals in central Rome. But the really distressing thing is said, we have had to double up all our ICU, that means intensive care units, are all doubled up. Instead of having 1 person in that room with negative pressure, they've got 2. And this is the real disturbing part. And we have more people lining up and no place to put them. So they're literally being forced to decide who's going to get a good shot at surviving and who's not. And nobody wants to be in that position. Nobody, unless you're on a battlefield. Nobody wants to say, well, you're a little sicker, so we're not going to put you in the ICU, but you just came down with it and we're going to give you a shot in the ICU. Italy has got a horrendous problem. And they have now shut their borders to all incoming flights. I don't know about the outgoing flights. They've shut their road borders. I don't know about the railroads. But this a number of people, and here's the really scary part. I talked to another doctor in Milan, someone I met face-to-face, talked to him today, which is in their time, it was evening their time. It's just getting evening here, and it's now like 2 or 3 in the morning over there in Italy. But I talked to them in their time about 10 p.m. And that was scary. The doctor saying, we're not supposed to tell anyone how many have died and how many have tested positive. We have instructions, which may change tomorrow, but we're not supposed to divulge that information, William. But she confirmed that they were also overwhelmed. So I tried for a little town where I just happened to know a doctor who lives in a little town south of Venice on the coast there, on the, I think it's called the Adriatic coast. And I got the same message. We're not supposed to release the information. So I contacted another Italian person who's outside of Italy, contacting their family, and she says the same thing. We can't get numbers. They won't tell us the numbers. So it's roughly estimated, as of tonight, on Friday the 13th, in Italy today, it's guesstimated they have 3,000 confirmed deaths, which, if the approximations are that 2 to maybe 3% of everybody who contracts this virus is going to die. The good news is 97% of the people that contract the virus are going to live. They're going to live through it. They're going to survive. And there's a recent video on YouTube, you can find it yourself, from a woman in Seattle that said, yes, I survived the coronavirus. So instead of being scared, buying all the tissue paper, toilet paper, and all that, be confident. Let not your soul nor your heart be troubled. Don't go out and panic, buy a half a case of tissue paper. Wiping your nose with tissue paper is not going to save you. The best thing you can do is wash your hands a lot. Don't shake hands. Don't get closer to 6 people. Try to isolate yourself when you're around other people in a meeting room, because you don't know who they were just in contact with. And all the people that died so far, to my knowledge, which I think is 11 now in Seattle dead, all of them came out of one nursing home, where it appears one visitor or attendant had been to a public facility where somebody just back from China had been, who later tested positive. But they survived the coronavirus. It's the people with weakened immune systems. And this is my big message to you. Who gives a crap? You should give a crap, yeah. And this toilet paper, it says on the back, is good for your bum, great for the world. Well, the best thing you can do is stay healthy. Take some turmeric tablets, stay healthy, drink lots of water, try to laugh every day, keep your spirits up, and don't get depressed over it, people. Don't get depressed over it. Stay happy, keep your immune system. The people who are most of the dead are those that already had diabetes, or they had cancer, or they're taking medicine for cancer or something. They've got a damaged immune system. So even if you're old like I am, and you're in your 70s, you're over 65, stay healthy. Get moderate exercise, and don't panic, especially if you live here in Santa Barbara County, where we have 0 cases. Now, here's the other side of that. During this meeting they had down in Santa Barbara City, in Santa Barbara County last night, I was not particularly happy or pleased to find out that they had only tested, I think, if I hear right, 7 people. 7, as in 7 people tested. Really? There's 750,000 people, and only 1 out of 100,000 got tested, and all 6 that were tested negative were in Santa Barbara or Goleta, and only 1 was in somewhere else in the county. What about the other 700,000 of us? So it's possible somebody in the county could have contracted it, but it doesn't mean it's going to be lethal. And keep in mind, people die from influenza and pneumonia every spring, winter, spring, from like Christmas time till about now and maybe a little bit into April. And let not your heart be troubled, because in 6 weeks it warms up and all of this is going to pass and be forgotten. Now somebody put out there, I don't know if it's still out there, a Chinese, allegedly Chinese video showing a woman who was said to have contracted the virus. And she was running down the street, grabbing everybody's door handle, coughing in her hand and coughing, and touching everybody's driver's door. Well, to answer that, I made this short video. The answer is, get one of these cars that opens automatically for you when you approach the door. You never touch the outside of the door. Watch, it's real. No, that's not it. That's not what we want to look at. You got me. All right, you guys. Now let's run the video. Shame on you. Just for that, you may not get your free toilet paper tonight, you guys. There we go. Now here's a car, big T in the back. This is called a Tesla X.
Touch the door
now watch, the door opens as you approach with the fob. Nobody touched the door. Nobody's in there. Nobody pushed anything inside. Look, we'll look inside the car.
So if you're worried about viruses and people touching your door handles, get yourself a Tesla X. You can also open the other doors, as we'll demonstrate here.
There's one of the back doors opening. Now here's a front view. Notice nobody touched the door handles. That's my point. Get yourself a Tesla X. They come down from the 120,000 they were. There's both back doors opening and nobody touched them. Nobody's in the car. So if you're worried about somebody touching your door handle and you're really, really scared out of your wits, there's the front doors open.
And you can close them all without touching.
Without touching.
What more could you want out of a car? Anyway, that's William Wagener's opinion. Virus? Coronavirus 19? If you saw that video with a Chinese woman allegedly touching everybody's door handle, scaring more panic in China, here's your solution, China. Get the Tesla X.
Yeah, that's my message to the Chinese. There's a lot of wealthy Chinese people in Beijing and in Wuhan and all over China. Get a Tesla X. Now, what I didn't exactly tell you is when I approached that car, I wasn't even touching the fob. The car senses the fob coming and automatically opens the driver's door. So you could have a bag full of groceries, you could have a baby in one hand and groceries in the other hand, and you walk up to the front door and it pops open for you. You don't even have to touch the fob. I don't know why Elon Musk didn't make his own commercial for this and send it with Chinese language to the Chinese. If you're really worried about someone touching your door handle and giving you the virus, get a Tesla X. But let not your heart be troubled. I can't say it enough. Who Gives a Crap is the name of a company who sells toilet paper on the internet. And I've tried it. It works just as good as anyone else. Then I looked at the shipping box that it came in, and on the back of the shipping box, it says, responsibly produced in China. So you may not want yours, but you know what? I've already tried it, and I didn't come down with the virus. And I think that means the shipping container, the box that the toilet paper is put in, might have been made in China. And we've had this in our possession for over a week and haven't got sick. Nobody in this county has got sick, least of all dead from the coronavirus 19. So do not let yourself be troubled. But if you're living in this little tiny town of Piacenza, Italy, where 54 are dead, which that implies about 5,000 people have it and survived. Population 102, just a little bit from south of Milan, a little bit to the east in northern Italy. Rome, we can't get absolute figures. Nobody will tell you exactly. But from all the people I checked with, my best guesstimate is Italy now has about 5,000 to 8,000 dead from the virus, with double that number about to die because they don't have the ICU units. They didn't have testing kits. Nobody saw this coming. It doesn't matter who you blame, but think back, the N1H1 virus, swine flu virus, every couple of years we have one that's a little worse than all the rest, and then it passes. By May, it's gone, it's forgotten, it's old news, and nobody will think about it. But stay tuned. I want to show you this video right now. Got it ready, Stephen? Keep watching. I'll deliver 2 rolls to you if you're low on toilet paper and you are among the first 2 to call the number I'm going to give out.
They had a whole issue on it, but you won't see it in any publication except the American Free Press.
Why can't they bring that name back? Why did it have to go to another name? That's what I wanted.
It's all court orders.
Will you be here tomorrow?
Well, they would enjoy your meal, folks, you know, don't have to turn around if you don't want to. The freedom movement that goes on is that you got courageous people who take a bold stand. And stand up for the truth.
This is Willie
Stand
Rodriguez
up
in the
for
distance.
justice. Stand up for freedom. They fight very hard for it. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, who is
Iran, all the countries that the administration was claiming to be sponsors of terrorism, and that made it a conflict of interest.
That's Willie Rodriguez.
So we
from
have
the
this
9/11.
We're doing a press conference, and we are going to put this list available. Press conference will be at 12 o'clock next day. Well, Henry Kissinger, the following day, 9 o'clock in the morning, he makes a press conference. I'm removing myself from the 9/11 Commission because I'm too busy. But just to show you the power of the families. Then we wanted to have a family member to represent us, to represent the families on the 9/11 Commission. Again, just to represent our interest. They never allowed it. They never allowed it. As a matter of fact, we have to create something called the Family Steering Committee, an organization of family groups and family members that will pose questions to the 9/11 Commission so they will answer.
Let me spell his name.
From 168, 69 questions, we only have 27 questions answered. 9/11, the 9/11 Commission. So many problems that we had through the whole process. I testified behind closed doors. Behind closed doors, while every other speech, as I call it speech, was done on an open hearing, televised, and it was always done with top people. Chief of the fire department, chief of the armed forces, chief of this, chief of that. But you never heard directly from the people that were inside the building. You didn't. Think about it. How many victims you heard? You didn't. What happened to those people that were there? How come they didn't testify? Oh, they were testifying behind closed doors. I testified, and what a surprise. They come out with 576 pages. My name is not there. You cannot find the name. My story was never even checked. 20-something first responders and farmers that I gave the list to the government to call right away were never called to the interview. 15 people injured from the basement were never called to testify. Now don't take anything that I'm saying on my word. The research is out there ready for you. Do your own homework. One of the reasons that we do this, so you can understand and do your own homework and take it upon yourself and find the truth. This is out there. On 9/11, I came into work late. I was supposed to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning every day. I was the person in charge of all the stairwells of the North Tower. Can you imagine that? One man to clean 110 floors. That was my job. That day I called that I was going to be late, but basically that's the story that has been out there. Actually, I called that I wasn't going to work. And the supervisor, Anthony Saltalamacchia, said, Rodriguez, you gotta make it here because somebody wants to do your job. You imagine if, I was, at that time, I was physically fit, and right now I don't think so, but anyway. They said, if you take off from work and I send somebody up there, think about it. Have you ever done 110 flights of stairs? If you ever finished, because I doubt you ever finished it. By the end of the day, your knees will be trembling so much. And it always happened that the person that had to replace me when I got a sick day, had to take 3 days off from work to recover. So every time I said I'm taking a day off, they went, oh, no, it cost us. But anyway, I said, okay, he said, please make it to work no matter if you're late. So okay, I'm gonna make it there. A lot of people don't know that I used to live also a block and a half away from the World Trade Center. So he said, you live across the street, for God's sake, just make it to work. Okay, so I made it to work. I made it at 8:30. And I went straight to the B1 office, the basement number 1. The building has 6 sub-levels of basement. B1, B2, B3, all the way down to B6. B1 was the support floor for all the companies for the World Trade Center, meaning American Building Maintenance. I worked for that company. The support office was there. While I'm talking to the supervisor on this door, the front door, 8:46, we hear boom! An explosion so loud and so hard that pushes upwards in the air, upwards. An indication that something just blew up below us. Loud, so loud that all the walls cracked, the false ceiling fell on top of us, and everybody started screaming. The sprinkler system got activated. And the first thing that comes to my mind, oh my God, one of the generators just blew up on the B2 level. You see, the ABM office was right on top, in line with the mechanical room for the Port Authority. And on the mechanical room, you have all the generators, all the water pumps for the air conditioners. You have everything that was mechanical in that area. And of course, the first thing that I'm going to say, well, you know, the generator just blew up. When I'm going to verbalize it, because everybody's screaming in horror, I hear, BAM! All the way on the top. The impact of the plane. 2 events separated between 6 and 7 seconds. All right? I said that they never coordinated right.
That's Willie Rodriguez at a conference that I personally filmed and documented back, I think it was 2002 in Orange County, California, not Santa Barbara, Orange County, California. Why am I showing you this? Because he was the guy who was the last survivor to be in one of the Twin Towers and get out alive. And the only way he survived is he ran out and he saw the shadow of the building collapsing, and there was a fire truck in front of him, and he knew he would be crushed if he didn't get under something. So he dived under the fire truck, and he lived to tell the story. What you hear him talking about right now is this big boom that came from below. He went in on the entrance level of the Twin Towers and started helping the firemen, they didn't have the keys to get through all the hallways unlocked. He had them. He was the janitor. He had been worked there for years and years. I forget if it was 10 or 20 years he worked there, and his only job was to wipe down the stairs in the emergency stairs every single day. That's what he'd do all day, is just wipe them, clean up the dust, keep it all neat, pretty and clean. He's a Puerto Rican, which makes him an American national. Okay, and he's wiping and cleaning every day. So now he's in there helping the firemen get people out, and he realized the building's shaking from below. As soon as he went in, that's what he's talking about. As soon as he went, there's this big uplift in the floor. This is what he's describing. And he thought it was the generators in the subfloor below the parking level that had exploded or something like that. What it really was demolition charges, which he didn't realize till later, much, much later. Demolition charges had been set in the Twin Towers basement. Now, we've all been told that the towers were like this, using my who gives a crap paper, that a plane flew in up here and then the whole thing just crumbled. Well, that isn't really exactly true at all. And it's more likely demolition charges were used. And professors at a university in Utah, I won't mention his name, I think he's gone into retirement now. Bush forced him out of the university for a brief time. George W. Bush, that criminal son of the criminal CIA director, who at the same time held a congressional seat when he was in Congress and also worked for the CIA, which is unlawful. You can't occupy two branches of the government at the same time, in case you didn't know that. Anyway, the point here is he was telling the truth, and all of a sudden he vanished from all media. All corporate media said, no, we're not running that story. That's not the approved story, so disappear, Willie Rodriguez. That's why his story is important. And when you first tuned in, you were seeing the people at a luncheon, finishing a lunch, and there was two very famous people I did a slow still shot on, and then we went over to Willie, who's way in the back there, and I showed you the screenshot. He's in Malaysia, and he was welcomed in Malaysia. Why? Because there's a lot of Islamic people, not radical, crazy Islamics, but Islamic people in Malaysia, and they were glad to hear the truth because Bush and his corporate ABC, CBS, Fox News, and all those rubbish things were pushing the lie that Islamic terrorists took over two planes and crashed them into the Twin Towers. It didn't happen that way. Those buildings were built to withstand 2 and even 3 of the biggest jets made to crash into them simultaneously, and they still wouldn't collapse. So how does one plane hit one, and then another plane hit the second one, and then the second one collapsed first, and then the one that had hit earlier collapsed half hour later? It wasn't the planes. This is the big lie. And it's relevant to the coronavirus. We're being lied to about some things. And we'll find out in due course just what the big lie is. But that's why I'm bringing this to your attention. And a little later, I'm going to really offend some people that love Israel. I don't hate Israel, don't love the Israeli people, don't hate the Israeli people. But we were sold a big lie, and we'll get to it a little bit later. I want to go back and let you hear Willie Rodriguez, and then he walks out of my camera while I'm manning. I had this videotaped in 3 different angles. Never had time to edit it all together the way I wanted it to, but he walks out of it, and then we'll come back to me. So here's Willie Rodriguez explaining what happened. He's the last man to survive the towers.
When that is loud and hit the top, you know the difference. I mean, I worked in a building for 20 years. 20 years. I would very easily tell you when the sound comes from the top and when it comes from the bottom. Very easy. And it was 2 different events. You see, I believe, honestly, that there wasn't an initial explosion, maybe to weaken the foundation of the tower, right on the basement. And this is a story that was never investigated by the 9/11 Commission. When that happens, and again everybody screaming, a person comes running into the office saying, explosion, explosion, explosion. A black guy from Honduras, who I did not know, named Felipe David. This guy worked for a company called Aramark, a supply company for the vending machines. He was on the B2 level filling up his cart with the supplies for the vending machines. When this explosion happened, he puts his hands to cover his face, and all the skin was pulled from under his armpits, on both arms, and it was hanging on the top of the fingertips like it was a piece of cloth. You know when you take off a glove and you let it hanging? Exactly that way. And I thought it was cloth. As he gets closer, is when you realize it was his skin. And when I look at his face, everybody's screaming in horror. When I look at his face, all this part was hanging on his face. Horror. And everybody's screaming when they see this man, this monstrosity, because it was horrible. And I say, don't.
Okay. Now, what happened at that conference, I got him on a different camera, not this particular tape. I was taping him from 3 different angles. That's how important I thought his speech was. It's rare you hear somebody who actually got out of the 9/11 Twin Towers alive, and he was the last one out. And literally the building was coming down, and he was trapped, I think, 20 hours under that fire engine before they dug him out. And had he not got under, he would have been dead. He would have been just big chunks of concrete coming down, because the building was being demolished. You know, demolition charge, boom, kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. And 9/11 comes around again this year as it has last year and the year before that and the year before that for over a decade. ABC, Fox News, CNN will not let you see this video footage of the explosions popping out. And when you know how wide that building is, and you see these giant explosions going out at right angles, at great force, and they're shooting out 800, 900, 1,000 feet straight out. That's a demolition charge. That's not something just collapsing, pancaking. Soon after 9/11, I think it was November, December, a guy from Santa Barbara named Eric Hofschmidt, I'm sorry, Eric, I twisted your name. He did his own investigation. And he came up with something that brings me to this tape about 9/11. Again, remember, you were not told the truth. You were lied to about who did 9/11 and why they did it. And it was all to get us in a war. As well as, I don't think this will come out in this video, so I'll tell you. The Twin Towers were being built in the 1970s, and I think they were finished in 78. Halfway up the 110 floors, New York City passed a new law. Said you cannot use asbestos as insulation anymore, anywhere in New York, because they know when you tear things down, it causes problems with lungs. School children, like where I grew up, they had it in, and they had to tear it all out. So halfway up, around the 60th floor or so, 55th, 66th, they had to stop using this formaldehyde stuff that I just mentioned before as insulation. They had to use something else that wasn't as good, because that's what the law does. It changes the law. You got to use something else. So as a result, the owners of the Twin Towers would have been required by a certain date, and I think the date was a year after the 9/11 event. It was sometime in 2002, 2003. When that date came, they had to close all the offices, get rid of all their tenants in the Twin Towers, evacuate it, take all the furniture out, and then they had to scrape the walls, tear out the ceilings, tear off the walls, and scrape all that insulation that was banned. And that's a hazmat job. That's a very, very expensive job. You're talking like maybe $1 billion. Meanwhile, they lose all the income for all the businesses on 2 buildings that have 110 floors. That's 220 floors, each floor an acre, right in prime real estate downtown New York, and you can't do anything with it except either demolish it or spend $1 billion and lose huge amount of money. So I'm not saying this is what happened, but use your own common sense. If you can cause a major disaster and destroy it and not lose a penny and collect the insurance on it, which is what happened, and the insurance companies would have gone broke, guess what? Congress and the government came in and said, oh, we're not going to let the insurance companies fail. The government, the ultimate socialist insurer, will bail out the owners. So the owners didn't lose a penny on the demolition. But 3,000 people lost their lives, give or take a few dozen, because they had a few dozen Puerto Ricans that were not legal immigrants working there, and their names are not read off every 9/11, because technically they weren't there. Plus we had like, what, 390 some firemen lost their lives? But the owners didn't lose the money because your Congress, your Democrats, and your Republicans made sure they all got bailed out. And then there was a special, what was called a special master. He's like a super judge. And he was appointed. One man went to every family that lost somebody in there, was badly damaged or lost their arms or legs or whatever, had lung damage, went to each one of them and said, look, we're not going to give you $50 million. We're going to give you $200,000. Or your father worked there, your grandfather, he died, but he would have died in 5 years anyway, so we're only going to give you $200,000. And he settled all the cases, but there were a few that refused to settle. They got nothing. Zip. That's how your Democrat-controlled Congress with a Republican President, George W. Bush, took care of we the people. The ones that said, no, we're going to sue, we want to know what really happened. The special master said, you're never going to get it into a court. We will not allow it. We're going to settle all these cases. You're never going to get a jury trial. Because if you have a jury trial, all kinds of things, like George W. Bush's brother was on Securicom board of directors, did away with the bomb-sniffing dogs just weeks before 9/11 happened. I could go on for 2 hours on this, and I don't want to. I'm just giving you some brief catch-ups. But if you keep watching to the end, I'll give you a phone number. You got to call, be one of the first 2 callers. I'll personally deliver tomorrow, Saturday, 2 rolls of brand new toilet paper. Who wants to use stuff? I mean, come on. Anyway, I'll deliver, but you got to give me your address, and you have to live in Santa Maria or Orcutt. So, with that, I have another 9/11 tape. You really should pay attention because we're lied to constantly. I know I say this over and over, but it's also true. Here.
On September 11th, we learned that 4 passenger planes were hijacked and taken radically off course. Within an hour, 2 of the planes had flown into the enormous steel towers of the World Trade Center, creating fires and eventually toppling them. Dazed by the news, the American public soon believed the fires in the towers had burned so hot they caused the steel frames of the buildings to give way. A myth developed, fed by official sources through the media to a bewildered audience.
So when it was attacked again, he immediately...
Elements of the myth. The impact of the airplanes, gallons of burning jet fuel, steel melting, the buildings failing and suddenly imploding. In a mere 10 seconds, 110 stories hurtled earthward, pulverizing into dust.
We ran for
right from the start, on the street itself, the official story was born.
Come out of nowhere and just ream right into the side of the Twin Tower, exploding through the other side. And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
The myth bled into the FEMA report and was echoed by the experts.
It was the combination of the impact load doing great damage to the building, followed by the fire, that caused collapse.
John Skilling and Les Robertson were the structural engineers who designed the streamlined steel frames of the Twin Towers in the 1960s. Because a wayward Army bomber flew into the Empire State Building in 1945, the towers were built with skyscraper crashes in mind.
The airplane we were envisioning was the largest airplane of its time, flying slowly and low, lost in the fog. We designed the buildings to take the impact of the Boeing 707 hitting the building at any location.
But the aircraft that hit the towers was a Boeing 767, heavier than a 707, fueled for a transcontinental flight and traveling fast.
707s and 767s are comparable. The maximum takeoff weight of a fully loaded 707 is almost 334,000 pounds. As airplanes only carry the fuel load they need, the smaller model 767s that struck the towers were not, in actuality, maximally fueled or close to their maximum takeoff weight. As to the fires, listen to Chief Oreo Palmer from his radio on the South Tower's 78th floor.
We got 10 isolated pockets of fire. We should be able to knock it down with 2 lines. Where you know that? 78th floor. No, we got 10 isolated pockets of fire.
Isolated pockets of fire. 2 water lines to knock them down. FEMA's executive summary relays that much of the fuel in the planes, jet-grade kerosene, was consumed by the initial fireballs and the following few minutes of fire. It then tells us that the burning jet fuel spread between floors and ignited the building's contents, causing more fire and generating heat. This was somehow enough to bring down the tower's 47-column steel core, 236 exterior columns, and thousands of steel trusses, all at the same time. Watch the tower smoking in the aftermath of the plane strikes. If you have ever tried to light a wood fire, you will know that smoking logs tell you the fire is not burning successfully. Smoke is the sign of an oxygen-starved fire. The Twin Towers stood for over an hour, smoldering but not flaming. During that time, thousands of people were evacuated by way of the stairwells. Others, trapped by debris, stood in the smoke-filled windows and signaled for help. In fact, the towers did what they were built to do.
The building was designed to have a fully loaded 707 crash into it. That was the largest plane at the time. I believe that the building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners because this structure is like the mosquito netting on your screen door, this intense grid, and the jet plane is just a pencil puncturing that screen netting. It really does nothing to the screen netting.
The towers were built to withstand 140-mile-an-hour gusts produced by winter storms. Anyone in on a windy day could feel them swaying. The single impact of a jetliner was no more of a blow than the continued battering of a hurricane.
I was just putting my stuff away, and all of a sudden we heard a loud crash, and the building started shaking, kind of moving like a wave.
New Yorkers were stunned 1 hour later when the first tower fell.
To the best of my knowledge, the considerations of the fuel in the airplane in terms of an explosion or a great fire was not considered. Now, we were not responsible for that aspect of the design.
Imagine building expressly for airplane impact, but never thinking of the fuel. Never before in the history of the world has a steel building collapsed due to fire.
I have not seen, until recently, a protected steel structure that has collapsed in a fire.
True infernos have raged hot and long in steel-framed buildings, but not one of the buildings ever came down. In 1975, the World Trade Center's North Tower suffered a nighttime fire.
And all those buildings, also made out of steel and concrete, did not collapse, no matter how long the fires burned. Do you think maybe George W. Bush, his staff, all the corporate media lied to you about these well-built buildings? Maybe somebody had an ulterior motive, because they would have had to take all of that old insulation that is not legal in New York anymore and to empty the buildings, loss of millions of dollars. So think about that. My point is, we're being, don't try to hoard all the toilet paper. You know, you're panicking, you know, you're overreacting. 2 to 3% of the people that get the virus will die. The other 97, 98% will recover. They'll be sick like you had a bad cold, and then you'll get better. So don't panic. Now I want to remember somebody I interviewed a decade ago. She had a baby by a guy she didn't plan to stay married to. And in the end, she got in an argument with her landlord, and he called CPS, and they got her thrown out and her child taken away from her, because then she had no place. But she did get another place pretty quick, but they stole her kid. This is the late, rest in peace, Christine Elsley.
So the funds that are needed for these services are supposed to be forwarded to Montana, and they were never forwarded. So California is keeping government funds for the child and not forwarding them to the child. They're keeping them here in the state of California.
So the state of California is cheating the state of Montana out of the federal funding.
Oh yes, definitely. Definitely.
So it's all about the money.
It's all about the money.
They don't care about your son.
Oh no, they don't care about my son at all. My son tells them, I want to be with my mom, I want my mom, I love my mom. And they totally ignore my son.
And they shoot him up with drugs.
And they shoot him up with drugs.
And he's even told people, I don't like those drugs.
Oh yeah, I told my son, I go, you tell them. He says, I do not like these drugs, please do not make me take these drugs.
And they force your son to take drugs.
And they forced my son to take drugs.
Isn't that weird in a country that has a war on drugs?
Yeah, this is what amazes me. They put me down for being on medication. They claimed that they were illegal drugs, even though I had a doctor stating and testifying that, in fact, I was on medication at the time of the invalid test that was taken. And by the way, I've been testing for 2 years, and they've never found any drugs in my system.
Never found any drugs in her system, but one of the things I didn't let her go on to say, because I just want to remember you, Christine Ilsley, may you rest in peace and God's blessing in a place far better than where you left this earth. She died on her way driving from California to Montana about this time of year. I think it was this flu season, and she had gotten sick because she had been homeless off and on. After they took her son away, her life fell apart. CPS did that. And if you're wondering why the FBI just served search warrants to San Luis Obispo Government Center down there, I strongly, strongly suspect had things to do with CPS kidnapping children from good parents, mediocre parents, and some not so good parents, and then letting bad things happen to those children. It's called trafficking the children. CPS is a prime funnel to traffic children into abusive, sexual, illegal activity. And you're not supposed to say that on TV, but that's 20 years of researching it has brought me to understand. Now, why am I telling all these different things? Christine Ilsley died, from something she contracted. I think it was pneumonia. And she didn't make it back to Montana. Never got to see her little boy again. And he would be almost an adult, if not a young adult right now. Wouldn't know where to find his mother. And I just hope he survived and somehow managed to get on and have a life. Now I'm going to tell you about something. Israel should come to America, their prime minister, whoever it is now, because apparently they're impeaching people there, and apologize to the United States Navy and specifically, publicly, to our Congress and the people of America. Israel, our friend, our buddy in the Middle East, killed 34 U.S. sailors intentionally on a ship called the USS Liberty, and it was just a spy ship. It had, I think, only 2 gun turrets and no real defense. Mainly it was loaded with spying stuff, and it was spying on everybody in the Middle East. And during the 6 Days War, it was not Egypt or Syria or Iran or any of those other terrible Islamic people, crazy radical, Islamics, that killed the Americans on their ship. And this has been hidden and hidden, but a few years ago, it came out. This isn't the best, but I like this video to tell you something about it. Israel owes us, now they did admit it, and they paid reparations to all the survivors and the 34 dead, but they never publicly came and said to Congress, we did a bad thing. We apologize for killing your sailors who were our allies during the 6 Day War. It was no mistake. Listen, pay attention. People, you're looking at what's left of the USS Liberty, shot to pieces by the Israeli Air Force on orders of their land-based commanders, even after the Israeli pilots called back and said it's not an Arab ship. It's a USS Liberty. It's flying an American flag. It's an American ship. And still, the politicians and the top commanders ordered those Israeli pilots to shoot and sink that ship after the top brass of Israel knew it was an American ship. And then it was covered up. We never heard about this in the 1967-68 election. None of this was told to us. The Vietnam War was still going on.
The last thing I remember is the captain on the intercom system saying, stand by for torpedo attack, starboard side.
Then the Israelis hit us with torpedo boats. Now this is while they're claiming to be our ally, and they get billions of dollars from us every year in free foreign aid. And even Donald Trump is afraid to cut off that foreign aid from Israel. Because so many of our politicians have dual citizenship with Israel and U.S., and even those that aren't with dual citizenship in Congress are afraid to take on the Israeli lobby.
The torpedo threw us up in the air like a roller coaster. It felt like one coming down. Dead silence, lights all off, smoke and haze everywhere.
It hit, and it lifted the ship right out of the water and put it down, and we started to list 10 degrees. But it was a slow list, and it was going. And I said, my God, we're going to flip over.
Armor-piercing rounds. They kept attacking.
So I went up and looked out myself before I tried to get anyone up, and that's when I observed a motor torpedo boat, Israeli, plainly marked with the Star of David, machine gunning our life rafts.
Shooting life rafts on a ship in distress is a war crime.
The torpedo boats came in closer and began to machine gun the ship using armor-piercing projectiles. It was like sitting in a cardboard box and having somebody shoot through it. The bullets were just coming everywhere.
So we were working feverishly to try to get a signal out at that time, and then finally there was, we were able to get a signal to the Sixth Fleet.
At 2:35 p.m., Defense Secretary Robert McNamara recalled the 12 Navy fighters that had been sent to our defense by the carrier Saratoga. At that time, no one aboard the Liberty had identified the attacking Israelis. It was 1.5 hours later that our embassy in Israel first told Washington that Israelis had attacked the ship. Possibly a U.S. Navy ship. How then did McNamara know to recall the help sent to defend the Liberty?
And McNamara said no, that no aircraft were to be launched. McNamara is the boss, you know. He doesn't have to explain why he says what he says.
He again notified Washington. Again, Robert McNamara ordered the aircraft recalled. He challenged the order, and Lyndon Johnson came on. Said he didn't give a damn if the ship sunk. He would not embarrass his allies.
personnel from the Israeli government and the U.S. Naval Attaché dropped a brown paper sack on the deck in the fore part of the ship.
And the note said, "Do you have casualties?" Pretty obvious that there were casualties.
One of the sailors carried that sack back to the captain, and the captain took out the note and read it, looked up at the helicopter and popped the social finger at him.
So those sailors were silenced, I think under penalty of court-martial if they opened their mouth. So that went on till that criminal president, LBJ, who was the master cover-upper of the JFK assassination, till he was out of office, he was dead and gone, his successor came and went. They kept that secret. Why? Because if you knew this, you might call Carbajal, our congressman now in 2020, or maybe our future congressman, Andy Caldwell, and say, hey, cut off all foreign aid to Israel. Zip. Let's take care of America first. Let's make America great and let Israel take care of themselves. Remember, the Israeli had a airline that was captured in the south tip of Africa, and some wacko nutcase general dictator down there was holding all those Jewish people hostage. An Israeli, without any help from the U.S., flew down there, caught them by surprise, got all but one, I think, of the passengers back alive. Most of them not even injured. Israel's totally capable of taking care of Israel. There's no reason you should be paying taxes to support the Israeli defense or the Filipino defense or Japan's defense or any of these other nations. I think Trump was spot on, correct, when he said, let's bring our troops home. But that's something you should remember. The USS Liberty, and most of those guys you saw have now passed away. But you can find that on YouTube. Just look up USS Liberty on YouTube, and you'll find dozens of videos, including a short one I did, but there are now dozens. Why? What's the point? Why am I bringing this up? That was 1967. My cameraman Reggie, I don't think was even born then. Most of you out there, because I'm so darn old, you weren't even born then. Why bring it up now? Because the same thing continues, because they won't tell you the truth about hardly anything. We were lied to by 9/11. Planes didn't bring down the Twin Towers. And then there was the third building, World Trade Center, collapsed. And nothing hit it. It just collapsed. There were the Twin Towers, and then there was the third building. I'm not talking about the Pentagon. I'm talking in New York City. There was a third building across a wide avenue. And I stood right next to that rebuilt building in where World Trade Center 7 used to be, and there's like a real small street. It's probably not any wider than 60 feet, about the distance of the studio we're in. And the building right next to it was perfectly fine. Had a few broken windows, I think, but they didn't have to rebuild that one, and it was the same distance from the Twin Towers collapsing as that building. You're lied to and lied to over and over, and if you don't search the truth, you will panic and go buy all the toilet paper up. You know, that's not going to help you. Isolate yourself, wash your hands, keep your distance from other people, but most of all, keep your immune system at its peak. Eat less meat, eat lots of fresh veggies. Keep your immune system healthy, and you will live long and prosper, as Spock used to say, like that. Live long and prosper. You will. The virus isn't going to kill you, especially if you're in Santa Barbara County. Even though they haven't tested hardly anybody. 7 people, that's not really, they're not really doing their job here in this county. But we don't need it that bad. And I think Trump did the right thing. So I want to take just a second before we go to the last thing, and I'm going to give you the number. When you call me and you want your free 2 rolls of toilet paper for listening, I'm only doing this one time, only tomorrow, Saturday, the 14th of March. First 2 people, I'll personally deliver if you're short on toilet paper. You have to leave me your address, your phone number to call back, and the time you would prefer to have it delivered on Saturday. And I'll give you that number in just a minute. First, I want to read you this email I got from Anthony Williams, standby attorney, because Anthony ran his own case. He didn't trust an attorney to represent him. I sent him and said, hey, I got a subpoena. I wrote to him, I said, I got a subpoena by the U.S. Marshals to appear in defense. And I'd already told Anthony, I'm willing to testify as an expert witness to dealing with home foreclosures. He writes back, hi, I am Mr. Williams, standby counsel. I am not a public defender, but I've been appointed to assist Mr. Williams in his defense. This is Thursday, January 30th, 2020 at 4:13 p.m. Please do not appear on court on Monday. Mr. Williams' case will likely not commence until the week of February 17th. We will give you as much notice as possible as to when you will need to testify. For more information, contacts or paralegal, et cetera, et cetera. At this point, you have not been designated an expert witness. And in point of fact, even though they spent the money to send out the U.S. Marshal to serve me here on the mainland, this trial is happening in Honolulu, Hawaii, spent all that money to have the U.S. Marshal drive all the way up from L.A. to serve me at 8 o'clock in the morning, which aggravated me only because I was sleeping, because I usually sleep late, because I'm an old guy. I'm just the kind of person likely to catch the coronavirus if my immune system was down. By the way, there are dozens of coronaviruses, if not hundreds, and they just change by a little bit, and there is no vaccine against the virus. Viruses are generally one-celled critters. They're just one cell. And vaccines can't protect you from a one-celled virus most of the time because they're constantly mutating. So even if you change this one, it mutates and has another one over here, almost like it, but not quite. So you might develop at great expense, a vaccine for this one, but it mutates in the other one. Its son or daughter, whatever you want to call that other cell, a mutated cell, isn't affected by the vaccine. That's why vaccines are useless. What you can do is get a kit, find out if you need to go into an ICU, intensive care unit. Get a test kit, but they're not available. And it's not Donald Trump's fault. Gee, they can't hate him because this was unseen, just like it was the Ebola thing, which was produced at Fort Detrick, Maryland. I'm going off on a tangent. I wanted to read you this. I did read it. Now, the number to call, remember, you got to leave me your address and your phone number. And this is only, and the time you want me is, the number is 805-928-1100, like you see right there. That's the number. You can start calling right now. The first 2 get 2 rolls. You got to give me your address and a phone number to call back and the time you'd like it delivered, sometime between noon and sunset on Saturday tomorrow. Now with that, I have some advice for you from a Dr. Bergman on the coronavirus. Here we go.
Coronavirus. Okay, we're going to go over the facts. Now, we can go into all sorts of cool conspiracies. You know, this scientist smuggled it out of Canada, and then the other scientist was killed, and then this one here. Okay, let's just look at what the facts are and what the future is going to be. We can really, really see what the future is, not with some giant crystal ball, just with common sense. Number one thing, You realize what this picture is up there? That's advanced technology. 1300s, by God, because they knew without a doubt that illness came from evil spirits and sin and bad humor. So they developed this giant nose where they could fill it with scented herbs, and everybody knows spirits can't pass through red lenses. So you have these red lenses, and then you have this smock covered, okay, with something that you can, if you bleed on or sputum, you can get rid of it and wash it off. So that's the technology. Now, the doctors in Europe, with their fancy technology, yeah, you could turn that up, that'd be fine. It's pretty. Okay, the doctors with this fancy technology, they would do a bleeding, which was popular for around 5,000 years, and then they would do quicksilver or mercury, okay? Using that fancy medical technology and everything.
Yeah, ancient medical technology, and medicine is advancing rapidly. The thing my father died from in 1988, they would have done surgery on the cerebellum, he would have lived. Who knows, maybe another year, 2, 3. Now, I've gotten a lot of people telling me, oh, it's the G5 coming out is causing coronavirus. Well, I can't say it doesn't, but I don't see any positive proof that it does. Is there an infectious disease research facility in Wuhan, China? One? Yes. There's also one in Fort Detrick, Maryland. And another thing you were never told when the Ebola virus broke out in Africa, it didn't come from African green monkeys habitating with humans or any kind of sexual thing. That disease was developed at Fort Detrick, Maryland as a biowarfare weapon. And it was so horrendous, they were afraid to test it in America on our human population because it would have got out of control so fast. They took it to and infected people in Africa. That isn't told you either. Just like in the 60s, 1967 Six-Day War with Israel against the united country of Syria and Egypt, which for a brief time they called it the United Arab Republic, and these two countries were going to start all coming together, and yet Iran, all of them, no, they're all too jealous of their own Islamic peculiarities. They couldn't ever pull that off. But we didn't hear about the USS Liberty in the 68, 69, the Vietnam War was all the rage on the media, nothing about Israel killing Americans intentionally. Even after their pilots said, hey, that's a US ship, they're our allies. Shoot, sink it. That's what the political brass and the military brass of Israel told their pilots. Then they sent 2 PT boats or torpedo boats out to hit it with torpedoes, and 171 were injured, wounded, 34 killed by our ally, Israel. Now, I don't hate the Israeli people or any Jewish people. That's not it. The point is, should we be bailing them out military with our hard-earned tax money? Or should we just say, you can take care of yourself, Israel? That's the point. And they lie to us so that we won't ever ask these questions. I think we should ask these questions. I think Trump is asking these questions. But Hillary and her gang of pedophiles that financed the DNC, and why hasn't Seth Roth's murder really been investigated? I hope Trump goes back and brings that one, because I think the truth will wipe out the Democratic Party if we really know the whole truth. Now, I want to go back to Dr. Bergman, and remember, if you want your free 2 rolls of toilet paper and you're still panicky because you're down to 1 roll, give me a call. Only tomorrow, the 14th. Today's the Friday, the 13th. And this show, this is only good for tomorrow. When it repeats, don't call me. Call this number, 805-928-1100. There it is. Write it down. Remember, got to give me your address, time you want me to deliver between noon and sunset, and I'll get it to you. Here we go, Dr. Bergman. I think he has some good things. Listen, it's about the coronavirus. Pay attention.
We're gonna use it. We're gonna check our hands for the virus. Okay, the CDC says you got to wipe for about 15 to 30 seconds. That doesn't work at all. Putting the hand sanitizer on after 2 minutes of rubbing. 2 minutes. I don't want to do this for 2 minutes, okay, but 2 minutes of rubbing, bam, there's still virus. So it takes about 4 minutes of soaking your body in Purell, rubbing all over the place to fight the virus. So why is this unscientific panic occurring? Why are we making this Wuhan area? Why are we shutting down everything? Okay, it does make sense. It doesn't make sense. But when you start to look at the overall big picture, so you got to like step back, because there's a reason that they're walling off Wuhan. Now we can say, you know, it's an experiment for 5G. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories. But what's the overall? Right now, we have an economic crisis in the world. Anybody? Well, it's hard to understand that in America because we can go to the store, we can buy food. The little paper things that we call money still have some kind of value that we could trade them for goods like food, gasoline, and things like that. But I'm talking the rest of the world. You know, Greece is going to default. Deutsche Bank should go bankrupt in the next couple of years. We're looking at a massive economic upheaval. Forget all of South America. I mean, this is a big deal because they're finding out currencies are no longer worth anything. Okay, and they've been overvalued. And what's worse yet, we're seeing that instead of using a currency to trade for goods, now we're trading currency for currency. This is where the stock market comes in, the gambling. Okay, world governments have to control the populations for the worldwide depression. Of course they do. When the depression hits, okay, because, I mean, America can't keep exporting its debt, okay? We're going to eventually have to, you know, say, hey, look, you're right, the greenback ain't worth anything. Because it was backed in gold, Nixon got off of that, then it was backed in petroleum, and then that didn't work out well because some of the countries like Libya decided to trade in their own currency. So now the U.S. government currency isn't backed by anything. So when people start to realize that, they're going to be a bit of concerned. But knowing that the government has screwed up the finances, okay, and this is not our government, it's the world government, okay, because you're looking at the World Bank going into other countries, giving loans that they can't repay, putting them in debt. Okay, and you're looking at the debt of every child, what is it, $4,000, how much per person? I think it's like either $4,000 or $40,000 per person that you're born with that you'll never pay off. So now they need to use a scapegoat, because if they come up and say, look, man, we screwed up on healthcare, most of the population is sick, 60% of the adults have a chronic illness or a disease, 70% of the kids 17 to 24 can't even join the military because they're so mentally screwed up. Okay, so we don't have a workforce, our economy is in trash, and who are we going to go? We're going to blame the government. Okay, so we got to fire everybody. This way the government can use this crisis to turn everything around and say it's the virus that caused this. 60% of the U.S. adults have a chronic illness, 54% of the kids. By 2025, that's 5 years from now, the cost of autism will exceed our defense budget. By 2030, the cost of dementia will exceed that. We don't have enough money in the economy to continue with the sick care. Now, Obamacare was a great idea of getting healthy people to pay into a system that's so dysfunctional that can't even take care of the people that are in the system. Okay, so that didn't work at all. Okay, 54% of our kids have one of 20 chronic health conditions. Half, and this is 2004, half the kid population had a mental, emotional, or behavioral disorder. And top military leaders, 70% of Americans, 17 to 24. This is an all-volunteer force, by the way. 70% of our kid population or young people population can't even join the military.
How many percent?
70%. So Reagan's one of his best things, tear down that wall. You remember that? That was pretty cool? Okay. Well, if we ever build a wall between us and Mexico, we better say tear down that wall, because we need some healthy people. Okay, we need some healthy people to man the factories, because there's going to be a centralization of production. That's the only thing that makes sense. Now we know Dow plunges after fear of the coronavirus, of course. because it is a world economy, okay? And I love this one. Forget SARS, the new coronavirus threatens a meltdown of China's economy. Now, small and medium-sized enterprise, 85% said they would be unable to survive more than 3 months under the current conditions. See, when you're taking factory workers out of factories, they stop producing material. Knowing that China exports a lot of their materials to industrialized nations like us, we're utilizing there, but we only have about 3 months of back stuff, okay, of materials. So this means car manufacturing, assembly plants, all of that in America will start to shut down. So why would China do this? Why would they sacrifice their own population? Why would if they're purposely doing this virus release? Because have you seen the thousands and thousands and thousands of empty apartment buildings? They went beyond to build the infrastructure, okay? And they don't have the jobs or the people to fill up these apartments. So they are spread thin. They were doing the same thing that America was doing. We just keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, okay? And it's not gonna work. So they're running to the end, just like America is. We're gonna eventually have no people working in order to pay into the system, so it doesn't work. Now, the media is not giving clear representation. Now, this one here, ourworldindata.org, brilliant. This is what the media is presenting. And the tall column on the right-hand side, terrorism, homicide, suicide. Now, they say terrorism is overrepresented by a factor of 4,000. Okay, that there's so few people on the planet that get injured by terrorism, and so many people that are injured by heart disease. Don't hear that a lot. Kidney disease, don't hear that a lot. Why? Because heart disease and kidney disease, most of the medical interventions are causing it. They're all environmental factors. So if you look at heart disease as an environmental factor, are you going to be supportive of the concentrated animal feeding operations? Are you going to be pro antibiotics in food? Are you going to be pro glyphosate sprayed on your grains? No. If we start looking into this, and we will, because we don't have anything to look at except our sick population, unless you're afraid of a virus. So people are afraid of the coronavirus. How afraid are you of cholera? Now, cholera, according to these statistics, cholera is deadly. It's about as deadly as the coronavirus so far, the statistics that we have now. Cholera is bad, right? Who in here would drink a vial of cholera? This man. This man. He went in, and you're looking at 1892. And again, at this time, they were experimenting around to find out. They knew that water had some bacteria in it that could have been pathogenic. So he takes this vial, and he has a theory that the bacteria in there might hurt some people and might not. Does that sound kind of like the coronavirus? Some people are going to get it, some people not. So he drinks a vial of this cholera and he doesn't get sick. His partner, buddy, drinks a vial of it, doesn't get sick. They give it to another person, guy gets sick and almost dies. So what's the difference? What's the difference? It's like somebody with pneumonia. So he reasoned that if swallowing a pathogenic bacteria sickened you, swallowing a beneficial one would make you healthier. My God. Common sense. Holy moly. So sure enough, he actually won a Nobel Prize in 1908 for other discoveries on how the immune system works. But it turns out that it's not the cholera that causes the problem. It's the weakened immune system. Did it matter if the cholera was built in a lab? Or if the cholera was wild forming? No, get that correlate, okay? Because I want you to, if you're going to be scared of something, be scared of a weakened immune system, be scared of the panic, be scared of the shift change that's going to happen with the economy that we've known is going to happen for years. anyone that's aware. So what do we know about the immune system? The head immunologist, rheumatologist, director of the institute